Welcome to Educate, Inform, and Challenge. My name is Teresa MacLennan. I'm the Executive Director here at the Women and Children's Shelter of Barrie. We are so thankful that you are here with us today. The goal of our show is to talk about the lives and experiences of women. We talk about gender-based violence, human trafficking, women in leadership and decision-making, women in business and politics. And we're just so thankful that you come along this journey with us. Our goal is to educate, inform, and challenge our thinking. Before we begin, we do want to thank our Indigenous community. Thank you so much for allowing us to be in this space and to have these conversations. We thank you so much. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome my fantastic guest today, Jennifer Armstrong. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I know that you are a very busy, active woman in the community. Can you just share with our viewers all the multiple hats that you wear?
Sure. So primarily right now, and for the purposes of this interview, I'm the founder of Politics for Women, which is a nonpartisan organization aimed at encouraging women to become more involved in politics at all levels. Personally, before that, I was a diplomat for a while. I was a college instructor. I was an office manager and administrative support person for a lot of not-for-profits and small businesses. Volunteer-wise, I do a lot of time and effort with the Kiwanis Club of Barrie, who do wonderful things, on-stage performance group, and of course with Canadian Forces Base Board, and I'm the current honorary colonel for the base.
A lot of hats that
Yes.
you wear, and very, very busy. And so, you know, thinking about where your life is now and all of this incredible work that you're doing, when you were a young girl, what were your dreams and hopes for the future?
You know, it's funny. The very first thing I ever wanted to be as a kid was a veterinarian. Go figure. And I was thinking about that the other day because someone had asked me, like, what did you always want to be? I'm like, yeah, I'm not where I thought I would be if you asked my 8-year-old self. And then after that, when I got into high school, I got really interested in politics. I took a lot of world issues courses and politics courses and that kind of stuff. And I was bound and determined I was going to be a member of parliament and I was going to be prime minister. That's where I was going. And then, you know, more experiences and more education, and I got into university and I took politics and political science and shifted into international relations. And when I left my master's degree, undergrad and master's degree, I was off on the pathway to become a diplomat. And that's where I ended up for a few years.
Wow, that is quite a journey, and I think there's so much there that I want to dive into. I know that you are a highly educated woman. Can you just maybe share with our viewers, if you're comfortable, all of the accolades that you've worked towards that you own? Your education,
Wow.
honorary colonel.
I could. I'm not sure. I tend not to think about them very often because I just do things that I do because I love to do them. But from an education perspective, I have a bachelor's degree, an honors bachelor's degree in political science. I have a master's of arts in international relations. I have been awarded the Newcomer Support Award from Simcoe County in the work that we did with some of the refugees from Syria. I was given the first honorary membership with the Barrie Business and Professional Women's Group. I've been honorary colonel for CFB Borden now for almost 3 years. I've worked behind the scenes on lots of things as well. Been out front in theater productions and been producer for theater productions as well. So yeah, done a lot.
Yeah.
Done a lot.
And I mean, I hate to put you on the spot that way, but and kind of throw you that curveball, but we do always really want to highlight and showcase effective women in our community that are using their voice in so many incredible ways. Mm-hmm. And I've always been very much in awe of your career path and your voice in the community. And so I just really, you know, and I know that that's important to our viewers, it is just so great to highlight you as a woman who's making a difference in our community. And so thank you for that kind of off the cuff, question that I threw your way. So circling back, we were talking about as a young girl, you wanted to be a veterinarian. What was it that changed that path for you?
To be honest, I discovered that veterinarians don't just cuddle animals. There's a lot of more emotionally connected decisions that vets have to make. There's a lot of challenges that they face, and I just realized that while I loved animals, I'd rather just have them as pets and have them as part of my family than actually be the one doing the medical work on them. So I kind of shifted out of that pretty young, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do for quite a few years. I wasn't one of those kids who was like, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. I was just, kind of floated for a while. And then when I took politics in high school, that's when it really, I was like, wait a minute, I get this. I understand how this works, and I want to be involved somehow. By the end of OAC, I didn't really know what that would look like other than the sort of traditional approach to politics, which is, you go become a lawyer and then you run for office, which is kind of what it was back in the day. And then I thought, okay, I know I want to do something to do with politics. And maybe run for office, maybe not. And then when I got to university, I sort of followed that. I was like, okay, I'm going to do political science major. So when you get into political science, they require you to take a variety of different courses in different aspects of political science. So I took the introduction, I took the, various specialties, local politics, international relations, statistics, that kind of stuff. And it was the international relations piece that really kind of grabbed my attention. I was like, this is fascinating. Like, this is about whole countries coming together and creating new relationships. And how does that work? And when does it work and when does it not work? And so over the sort of 4 years of my undergrad, one of the things that really caught my attention was the European Union. So I looked at it and thought, well, for centuries, all of these countries had been at war. So what was it that now allowed them to come together and unite and have a common perspective, a common approach to things? And so I did my research. That's what my master's degree was on. I looked at that and the various theories as to what that tried to explain that. And then I thought, well, where do I go from here? If I have a master's degree and I'm looking at how countries relate to each other, the transition into diplomacy, into becoming a foreign service officer for the Canadian government was a very sort of seamless one at that point. It was like, this makes sense. I love this. I understand this. I want to be a part of this process. And so I did the application to join what was then the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade and is now Global Affairs Canada.
I am loving this conversation because it's so foreign to me and not at all a part of my world in the nonprofit and my own personal experience to sit in this chair. I am learning so much, and what an incredible journey and piece of work that you started to do then, that I know that you're continuing to do today, which we are going to dive into because it's such an important piece of what you're doing. But when you were starting that journey, you'd finished school, did you find that doors opened for you, that it was an easy place to maneuver from, to move ahead, to find opportunities? What were any of the barriers, maybe personally, but also in the systems around you, that you may have had to conquer?
Yeah. I think the first sort of stepping stone for me, and it wasn't necessarily a barrier, but it was to really understand the process to get in. It's a government job. There's all kinds of tests and exams, and I had no idea what to expect. And it's a very small, closed circle in the foreign service community. There's not a lot of diplomats, so you're not likely to run into one that you've met or be introduced to someone in the network. And so I made the effort to kind of find someone who could mentor me or guide me along that process. And there was actually a company run by a former foreign service officer who took upon themselves to train or to educate people on the process and would help you understand, what does the exam look like? How do you prepare for the exams, the interviews, the questions, all that kind of stuff. So I reached out to that and was able to gain the background knowledge I needed to be really successful in my approach. So that was very helpful. Once I got into the department, and I did French language training for a while and then worked full-time for the department for a few years, I found I really wasn't prepared for the way the department worked internally. So there was the rules on the paper as to how you had to apply to different things and how you to get your postings or to get certain things done. And then there was the sort of underlying piece of who had the influence in the department based on, what area was the government really focusing on from a policy perspective. And so the people working in that area had a little bit more influence or had a little bit more cachet to be working in that section. And I really struggled with that. I struggled with trying to figure out how I presented myself, how I talked to people. I was so used to school where you write your papers, you get your marks determine where you move on to, right? So I did my work, I got my marks, and that influences where I move on to. And there's a whole other level, and this is true of corporate world, this is true of government world, that I was totally unprepared for, to how to navigate the sort of the corridor reputation that you have and the relationships that you have to build. And I missed out on how to deal with that. And I think what I would, to anyone else going into a similarly large organization, is to find someone that you can ask to be your coach or your mentor. I think it's really important that we pull into our realms mentors who aren't there to tell us what to do, but are there to provide us with insight and guidance and a greater understanding of the situation we're in. And that can be a job, it could be an industry that you're working in, finding someone who can give you that insight, or it can simply be, friends that know more about the personal situation you're working in or have, that you're dealing with. Having those mentors, having those people to bounce ideas off of and to give you some suggestions or a different perspective, I think is really important. And I missed out on that there.
What would you say when you entered that work environment, the ratio of women to men?
It certainly wasn't half and half. It was certainly better than it was. I mean, certainly I'm probably going to get the date wrong, but in the 60s, up until the 60s, it was expected that 60s, 70s, if you were a foreign service officer who was female and you were getting married, you would resign. It was just expected. It wasn't written down anywhere. It was just, that was the culture, that was the expectation. And the suggestion, as I read through the history of the department, was that you couldn't have divided loyalties. So you couldn't be loyal to your spouse, your husband, and represent the country abroad. That was the sort of perspective of the time. And oddly enough, and I can't remember the woman's name, but there was one woman who, she married another foreign service officer, I believe, and just, her boss called her in and said, well, you're getting married, how do you want to transition out, and, when will be your last day? And she looked at him and went, no. And he was, what do you mean no? Well, I'm not quitting. Why would I quit? I love this job. But that's what show me where it says I have to quit.
I love it.
And it was just that sort of like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And it started to change that culture, started to change that expectation. And so, it got to the point where it was much more common that women were just, no, I'm not going to do that.
So that is a great place for us to put a pin in this conversation, and we are going to circle back to it. We're just going to have a very, very quick break, but please stay with us as we just continue this great conversation with Jennifer. And we love the unpacking and the exploring of her personal journey. When we come back, we're going to talk about all the experience, the education, the personal life experience that she's had that has led Jennifer to the work that she's doing now. Stay with us and we will be right back. Welcome back to Educate, Inform, Challenge. We're so glad that you're with us here today. We're having a great conversation with my friend Jennifer Armstrong, and we're just really talking about the work that she's doing in the community. She wears many, many hats, but she is a woman who is using her voice to bring about change, and so we're glad that you're with us. Welcome back, Jennifer. And so let's carry on our conversation. We were talking about your education, the work that you did, really to get you where you are in your life now. Mm-hmm. So let's pick up there. Let's talk about what your passion is, the work that you're doing in the community, and why is it important?
Absolutely. So through a variety of ways, I ended up about 4 years ago now. Yeah, actually, it was almost exactly 4 years ago. We were heading into the 2018 municipal election. And one of the things that I had really become more and more aware of as I worked in the political field, both internationally and domestically, was the lack of female representation. And I started to really understand the importance of having women's voices and gender diverse voices at the decision-making table. And I, being the sort of little bit of an academic and policy wonk, as they say, I looked into why. Why is this important? Like, I knew at the core that it was. There's some things you just know as truth, right? I knew it was important, but I also had to be able to explain to people why it was important. And so some of the research that I did, some of the experiences I had really showcased that having women at the table changes the conversation. It sets the agenda differently. And those who don't have those experiences can't set the agenda in a way that benefits women because they just don't have those experiences. It's not through any sense of maliciousness or desire to keep people down. It's just when you don't have those experiences, you can't speak to them, you can't showcase them. And so I started to really want to see that agenda setting shift. I wanted women at the table, and I didn't particularly mind who they were or what political partisanship they attached themselves to. I just wanted to give them the tools to be able to sit at the table. And I knew that from my own research, some of the biggest challenges to women getting to the table was understanding the system and seeing that they could be part of it. Because a lot of role modeling is important in politics, right? So if you don't see yourself at the table already, you don't always say, oh, I can be there. Some people absolutely can, but many of us look at it and go, oh, that's not for me then, right? I'm not there, someone who looks like me isn't there, I'm not gonna try. And so I worked with a couple friends to put together a workshop, Sunday afternoon workshop, with a bunch of different speakers to come out and just speak to their experiences as women in politics or their experience as people who had supported women in politics, and about the challenges that they faced or about the passion that brought them to the table or whatever they felt like talking about. And it was pretty well attended. We had 40 or 50 women come out for the afternoon and listen. And out of that, we had 5 or 6, I think, who ended up running in the following year's municipal elections, both either as councillors or as school board trustees or other opportunities. And it really sort of showcased that importance of education, that importance of sharing knowledge, of showcasing the methodology behind things so that people could go, oh, that's not as hard as I thought it was. Or that's not as much of a challenge, and I can fit it into my life, or I can fit it into what I'm doing. And so I kind of took that and then started to build on that. So it was more of can we have more conversations? So we started to do once a month meetings called Pints and Politics, and it was held at a couple of the restaurants downtown, and it was, come and, have a bite to eat or, have a beverage and sort of ask questions. And it was, the opening line was always, the only, stupid question is the one you don't ask. And if I don't answer the question or I don't know the answer, I will find it out and I will get back to you. So it kind of blended the work that I'd done as an instructor, because I'd taught for many years with Georgia College, and this desire to really share the specific knowledge I had around Canadian politics at the municipal, provincial, and federal level. So there was no, it has to be about municipal politics, but whatever you want. Any question you have, throw it out there, and for the vast majority, it was just women who were there. There were a couple meetings where a few men would come, but it was more about, this is safe space where you can come in and ask whatever question you want, and, I'm going to try my best to answer it.
What do you think the maybe fear is that women in particular may have about venturing into politics?
I think there's a variety of reasons why women hold themselves back. I think primarily we often self-select ourselves out. So, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. I remember hearing from one woman who was part of a candidate selection team for one of the federal parties. And she said what was really interesting is as she traveled around the country asking people to run for that particular party, she would go into a man's office and say, we would love you to run for us. And they would say, oh, what took you so long? Of course I'm going to run. That'd be awesome. And she would go into a woman's office and ask them, and it was almost inevitably the very first answer was, oh, no, I couldn't possibly. Why would you ask me? Right? And it would take 2, 3, 4, 5 asks maybe from different people to say, no, we really think that you can bring something to this. And, you don't have to be with all of the titles and all of the accolades and the 6-figure salary or whatever in order to qualify to be an integral and important part of the political decision-making process. And I always thought that was interesting that it would take that many times because I think we do. I couldn't possibly kind of thing. So that's the first part. I think women have, as I'm sure you know well, the lion's share of the responsibility when it comes to family. Responsibilities in the household, responsibilities for children, responsibilities for aging parents, and trying to look at all of those responsibilities and then add in something that's potentially precarious, potentially all-consuming if you're doing, MP or MPP or a mayoral campaign or job. How do you balance that when a lot of the requirements fall into what is non-work day hours in the evenings or weekends. So there's that concern as well. And then I think there is a fear aspect. There's the politics can often be portrayed as a nasty, mean, aggressive, bully-laden venture. And it can scare people off. I don't want to get involved in that, and I totally understand. It's a huge challenge, and I think we've seen it locally where people are like, I don't want to continue, or I don't want to, move on or get into that field because it does seem very aggressive and very angry a lot of the time, and I don't want to have to deal with that.
And I should imagine too, for anyone, man or woman, the fear of failure, the fear of not being elected, let's say, right? It's not a comfortable place for any of us to sit in, but how can we take the learnings from that and apply it to where we go next?
And that was one of the beautiful comments that we had from some of the women who spoke at our workshops and who spoke at our Pints and Politics nights or during some of the other conversations that I've had, where even women who haven't won, who have learned so much from the process, have found a different side of themselves that they didn't know existed, or expanded a part of themselves that they are more comfortable with now, that they feel themselves stronger and more able to approach other issues or other passions that they have in their life. And that's been fantastic to hear as well, that even when you aren't the champion or the winner or the end result is not necessarily what you wanted, it still brought so much to their life to participate in the political process.
And we can learn so much from when good things happen. Mm-hmm. It's great. But there's so much learning that can happen when things don't work out the way that we wanted them to, right?
Absolutely.
Like I think those are wonderful growth opportunities for all of us just to take in. There's so much that we can dive into in our conversation. I'm really curious about where you see our movement happening. Let's talk about municipal politics here in our city of Barrie. We have 2 women on city council.
Yes.
So that's good.
Mm-hmm.
How do we move forward? How do we expand that? What do we need to do to make change happen there so that we do have equal representation at the table?
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things is to have more women run. I think the more female candidates you have running, the more likelihood you have that a woman is going to be elected. We see that federally and provincially as well. So with the most recent federal election, we had, if I remember my numbers right, about 43% of the candidates put forward by federal parties were female or gender diverse. And we elected 103 women MPs, and that's 30%. So the higher percentage of candidates we have, the more likelihood we have of getting a really good, diverse blend on council or in Parliament, for that matter. So I think encouraging women to run, and that it takes more than one ask, right? And it takes us who are part of the process and understand it to go up to women and go, you ever thought about running for council? You ever thought about running for school trustee? Oh, me? Why not? Tell me why you think you can't, and I'll tell you why you can, right? And sometimes that starts with an ask like that. Sometimes it starts with, would you come out and volunteer on a campaign? Don't run this time, that's fine, but come out and learn. Come out and see what it's like. Sometimes it's about ensuring that there's more women on the committees that serve council as citizen representation, so that they start to see the impact they can have from that perspective. And then there's a little bit of, you get a small taste of it, and then you're like, oh, maybe I can do more, right? Maybe I can have more of an impact. Maybe I can change more things. And so there's that piece of it too, right? So it's encouraging and asking women to run, but it's also about encouraging and asking women to get involved and to connect to the process and to connect to the system. Because then we start to see where the holes are that actually structurally stop women from running. So when we look at municipal councils that, like Barrie's, are part-time, the mayor obviously is full-time, but all of the councillors are part-time. How does that impact women differently than men? When all of your meetings are in the evenings, all of your council meetings, all of your committee meetings are run after work hours in order to accommodate those who have other jobs, what does that mean for family support? Do we have family support that exists at the municipal level? How can we maintain that? And the more women, or for that matter, men who have family requirements or need family support as well, that are involved, will start to ask for those things, right? It's interesting, when we had a couple of elections ago, when we had our first gender equal federal cabinet, that's when you started to see a lot of those conversations. That's that agenda setting piece I was talking about, right? You start to see those conversations of, why are we having meetings at 7 o'clock at night? And where is the childcare or the reimbursement for childcare expenses that these people are going to have to? Or can we reflect that in the salaries, that if they're going to be part-time, then we need to acknowledge that they have these responsibilities, and we want people with families on council because they bring that experience to council.
We want to encourage folks in our community to reach out to you, and we can share your information. If anybody has some questions about becoming involved, we really hope that this has been a conversation that has inspired and motivated anyone who's listening to become involved in politics in whatever fashion feels comfortable for you. The best thing you can do, though, is start the process, ask the questions, and reach out. Thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you here again next time. Take care, and bye-bye.